Oh, so it's gone.
No, she saved it.
No, I mean
the bourbon.
The bourbon's
The whiskey's
gone.
gone, yeah.
The whiskey's gone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. This is what you call self-control.
Look, I don't know about you.
It's decorative.
I don't know about you guys, but every time we have this, I have to go to the ABC store.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's no.
The cupboard was bare.
Yeah, that's all caramel water. There's nothing left in it.
It's all presentation.
Why are these all tasting the same? Hey everybody, we are here for episode 3 of the Bourbon Boys, and I'm here with my good friends Derek,
Hey.
Elton,
Hola, brother.
and Krat.
I'm just glad to hear we're good friends.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, tonight we're going to be covering 3 different bourbons. We're going to be talking about Blanton's, Buffalo Trace, and Russel Reserve. So with that, let's get going.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
All right, I will give it a whirl and start us off. So settle in. We're going back to 1855.
Oh boy.
We're going to be here for a while.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
I'm not sure Elton's
You might be able to pick it up. So, no, I mean, I'm not going to go in depth, but I thought the history of this place was actually pretty interesting, and much like some of the others that we've talked about, I think the origination and how it's evolved through Prohibition and to today is pretty interesting. So Wild Turkey actually kind of started. It didn't truly start in 1855, but
We're talking about Russel's.
Yes,
You said Wild Turkey.
I did, because that's who makes Russell's
Well,
Reserve.
there you go.
Oh, okay, there's a dot that wasn't connected.
Connection made.
Okay, connecting the dots. I know, I was confused too, because when I was researching this one, Wild Turkey kept coming up, and I'm like, I've got to be looking at the wrong thing. Yeah. So Wild Turkey actually is a distillery that makes Russell's Reserve, and the name Russell's comes from a father-son duo who actually still today works at the distillery. Cool. So
From 1850 something?
well, they're not from 1855. But
I guess the stuff is
having-
a good preserve.
it's a good story.
Yeah, I'll have more.
It's a good story. But no, back in 1855, there was a gentleman by the name of Austin Nichols, and he actually started a wine and spirits store, and he eventually would become the owner of Wild Turkey. So in 1869, the Ripey brothers, I think that's how you call it, or maybe it's Rippey, I'm not sure. Could be one or the other, so I'm sure they're both dead, so it doesn't matter. The Ripey brothers, they actually opened a distillery that was actually on the Wild Turkey Hill in Lawrenceville. I think it's Lawrenceville, or maybe just Lawrence, Kentucky. So it actually did start on Wild Turkey Hill.
Oh, all right.
But the name actually didn't necessarily come from that. The name actually was, as the company evolved, or the distillery evolved, a couple of the executives were actually on a hunting trip, and they were hunting wild turkey, and that's where the name actually came from. So,
Okay.
Whether they piece those together or not, I'm not really sure. Jim Russell, so getting to the Russells part, actually joined the company in 1954. And in 1976, actually, the company introduced the first ever bourbon liqueur to the bourbon industry. Yeah. So there was a couple kind of interesting points along the whole timeline. So you can see we got to 1976 pretty fast. In 1981, his son Eddie actually joined the company. And they were actually one of the first to produce... Hang on a second.
I don't think I've ever heard of bourbon liqueur. We've had the bourbon cream
Yeah.
and all the other bourbon derivatives, but I don't think I've seen or heard of a liqueur.
They actually created a product too later. I think it was around the late 90s, where it was a combination of bourbon and honey. And it was like a honey liqueur, but it actually combined those two things together. So in the 1991, 95 up to late 1999, they introduced a lot of firsts into the bourbon industry. So not just bourbon itself, but like the liqueurs and these honey types of things. So
something had to take the place of Zima.
I guess,
Right.
yeah.
Wow.
So in 2000, though, Jimmy was actually inducted into the Master Distillery or Master Distillery Hall of Fame. So he's actually a master distiller. Cool. And his son fell suit to that actually later in 2015, where he was given the title of Master Distiller within Wild Turkey. So at that time, they were the only father-son duo in the world that were both master distillers. So
That's pretty awesome.
I just thought the story was kind of interesting. So
Very much so.
there's a lot more to it, but that's all we're going to talk about.
I bet their Christmas parties were amazing.
I bet they're fantastic. So the bottle is actually, it's bottled at 90 proof, which you can see on the bottle. It's a small batch, and it has a hint of caramel and vanilla in it. So when you actually taste it, it reminds me a little bit of the TX.
Mm-hmm.
Not
as sweet as the TX.
It's not as sweet. I think the TX is a little smoother, but the finish on this is actually pretty smooth.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think I felt a little bit more of an initial bite on this one than the TX, but I still thought there was a really good flavor there. The interesting thing about this that was called out, and I don't know if this is the same in a lot of others, but they actually do not use, they use all non-GMO produced grains. So they refuse to put any genetically made grains into their product. So that's something that they actually really call out around their product, in that they still actually hold the original strain of the yeast at their distillery in Kentucky, and they continue to use that in the production of the bourbon. So, yeah, so I thought that was cool. Pretty typical white oak American. They do a number 4 char on their barrels, which is called the alligator char, and that has to do with where the name comes from. Is actually what the staves actually look like inside the barrel. So they kind of have a glossy, rough texture to them, like alligator skins. So number 4 char actually is often referred to as alligator char. So
Nice.
Yeah. That's all I got.
What's the, do we know what the mix is? Corn to rye?
I don't know what the mix is. I tried to find it, and that was not revealed on the site. I didn't see it with any of the bourbons that Wild Turkey actually produces.
So no recipe card out there?
No recipe card.
Well, let's give it a shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you taking yours?
On the rocks.
Rocks.
Yeah, y'all's balls are making lots of noise.
Dave's a neat guy.
I am a neat guy.
And quiet, apparently.
Yeah.
This is really good.
It is
I like
good.
it.
It is good, yeah.
I really like it.
So, I mean, it's interesting because the second taste I've had
Yep.
actually is a little smoother than the first, but I think that's pretty common.
Yep.
It's got a
Takes
long.
3.
It's got a long finish too.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It kind of, and they talk a little bit about that on their site, how the taste actually sits with you.
Yeah,
It does.
it's nice.
So,
Yeah, it doesn't have that high evap, feel to it where it's like, all right, now it's gone.
no.
I wonder
So-
what the you talked about the extra char, the number 4 char, the alligator char. The Clyde May had it talked about an extra char. So I'm assuming 4 is a higher number, and it was fairly smooth like this. So
Yeah.
I wonder what that contributes to the flavor.
The smoothness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think something I read in here, there's a little bit of a smoky flavor to it that they hint to. Now, whether that has to do with the alligator char,
Yeah.
that I don't know, but that'd be interesting to look further into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. I like it.
Nice pick, Kurt.
Yeah. I think it's got a good story, too. You got this
Yeah.
father-son team
Yeah, it's pretty cool. pretty cool.
following in. So it sounds like son followed father.
Son followed father.
Okay.
Yeah, the son came into the company in 1981.
Oh, okay. So much later. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
much later,
30-something
so-
years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost 30.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. And to have that bond,
Yeah.
it would be an interesting thing to see if that still exists. Like, as we start to talk to other distillers, I'd be curious to see how many are generational meaning
Legacy.
legacy,
Yeah.
and I want to do it.
Right.
That this is something that is the family identity, and and is there a plan to keep that going? Are there additional Russells that are in the wings earning their titles?
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah, I know.
interesting too with something like this that's truly turned into a craft, right?
Right.
Where you see, sons following fathers and daughters following as well, and kind of taking something that a family stands for, and
Right.
and taking it to the next level. It's pretty cool.
That's very.
Yep.
It stands out too. If you think of how few, at least in my mind, how few people I know still have a generational connection to a vocation or a passion like this, where 2 or 3 generations ago it was probably more accepted, but now as we come into kind of going off and doing your own thing, and your own identity and all of the either the opportunities or the expectations that you just go and find your own thing.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, for generations it was you're an apprentice or a gopher or learning the same trade just by being around and helping out. But you're right, that is no longer the case.
Yep.
All right, I like it. That's a good call.
Yeah.
Good pick.
Yep, good pick.
Yeah.
All right. You want to take a quick break?
Let's take a quick break.
All right.
All right.
Be right back
We'll be
after
right
this
back.
break.
Okay.
Guarantee Mondays.
Yeah, but the girls, so it is. Many things brought us together, but one of the things we've talked about is that we've all got kids in the same age range,
Right.
which right now, unfortunately, from an economic standpoint, they're all in college. So is everybody back this week?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
last
Back.
week?
Yep. Wednesday.
Yep. We are officially taking the double college hit right now.
That's right. You got 2.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Dang.
So,
That'll leave a mark.
oh yeah. Yeah.
That'll leave a mark.
It's just money, Dave.
I know.
Yeah. Now, Kurt,
Just
you
money.
and Derek, home stretch, right?
I'm in the home stretch.
I'm not in the home stretch.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay.
The math confused me. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. No, I'm in the home stretch. Senior year, NC State.
Yeah.
So that comes with the, oh my God, it's senior year. What am I going to do the rest of my life? All those worries and stresses and, just keep heads down and do a good job and enjoy it while you can.
Enjoy the
Yeah,
ride.
exactly.
Life will be on the other side of it
Yep.
when you're ready.
And it will smack you in the face really hard.
It's going to come up pretty quick.
Yeah.
When
It's gonna come quick.
there is no perfect path.
No.
That's where
No.
my daughter she's only a sophomore this year, but she really seemed to have this image that I should have this figured out. I know where I'm going and have the landmarks. It's like, sweetheart, that isn't how it works.
That's right.
Just go with it.
We had the same conversation in our house, and I'm like, I'm almost 51. I'm not sure I figured it out yet either. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't know if it's a good thing to say to our kids because they're like, shit.
Let me know when you figure it out.
That's right.
I'm following your lead.
Because they're like, what am I doing this for if it's going to take me 40 years to figure it out?
Can I live here until you figure it out?
No, I'm kind of going through the same thing. Listen, I think we're not on the homeward stretch, but we're on some kind of stretch. But I think it's tough, right? These kids feel like they need to have this whole thing. I didn't go into it thinking I had to have it figured out.
No.
No,
What did you go? What did you go in for? What did you study?
I went in for law.
And what are you doing now?
I learned very quickly that was not for
Not
me.
law.
Yeah,
Right.
You
So-
argue really well, though,
I do. Maybe I should have gone into law.
except against me.
Alton, what did you sign up for, and how are you doing that?
I started in architecture.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, and about halfway through, I made it through most of my freshman year. Then I'm sitting in a lecture hall, and we had a traveling professor, or not professor, traveling professional. Came in, looked across the audience, and said, "Hey, 90% of you will end up designing JCPenney awnings."
Oh.
Well, I'm looking around. I'm like, well, that number one, that sounds like it sucks.
Yeah.
And two, it's like I don't think I'm going to work harder than 90% of these people. So shortly thereafter,
I'm never going to get the Penny's job.
Very
that's
honest assessment and quick.
That's great.
It's a quick
it
assessment.
worked out well. I'm like, I think I'm done.
Dang.
Yeah. So I'm not an architecture for all of you who are wondering. It's
Yeah.
David?
David.
I started off as a business guy and stayed
Stuck
with
with
it.
it.
Stayed
Yeah.
with it all the way to grad school. So yeah.
All right.
Derek. Well, you. It's gonna
I
be a
was
good story.
I originally went in to be a French teacher.
I can
Yep.
see it, but I don't
Pepe le
The first,
Yes.
the first thing that goes to my mind is, why does that not surprise me?
exactly.
The guy who can do everything wanted to be a French teacher.
Oh,
Can you-
little black beret? It'd be
Yeah,
perfect.
it was.
Can you say a sentence in French?
I don't think I can anymore. No,
Yeah.
Oui,
no,
oui, mon
I'll,
frère.
I'll work on it, but no, I really wanted to be a French teacher. I enjoyed French all through high school. Studied abroad with AFS like Kurt did.
I didn't know that.
That'll be a whole episode.
Oh my God.
I know.
It had to be
And,
the same year as I was.
It was
No,
junior year
Oh.
high school summer.
I wasn't that advanced. I had to go after high school.
Okay. And then I freshman year at BC, I read like 15th century French. And I was like, I'm done.
See, I bet he was so deep in his shirt. Deb, you got to hear this.
It was terrible.
Oui,
and,
mon frère.
I kept talking to the advisor, and they're like, no, there's like 3 more years of this. Like, I'm out. Same thing. That was my JCPenney on
To
it.
teach kids
Like,
French
I am not muscling through 15th century literature.
in French.
I just want to learn how to say cool things more and teach kids how to do it and have the summers off.
That's right.
Good grief.
But that
I
didn't
wouldn't
work
even
out.
read 15th century English.
Nope, it was awful.
But think about that. Like 3 out of 4 of us where we started didn't end up.
Yeah.
And I also think about the path of my career and the things that I've done have virtually nothing to do with my degree.
I would argue that what was your degree?
So I got a degree in marketing,
Yeah, so
but I also spent 7 years building a museum.
But I would say that marketing is problem solving. It comes with curiosity, asking
Okay,
questions.
That's fair.
I would say your attraction to law is probably like there's an answer and a way to present an argument or a compelling reason why. And I think a lot of that's when you figure like we all have a marketing common thread here. I think it is the curiosity, and that's a lot of what I keep telling my kids, which is just stay curious.
Yeah.
Like it's not a matter. It's
Yeah.
not going to be a linear path. It's a circuitous path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be curious. Keep learning.
So how do we get them comfortable with that? Because I think we're kind of on the same wavelength with our daughter, right?
Yeah.
And I think we keep saying you're at a place where you have the opportunity to just explore. So just explore, but there's this need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't think it's necessarily a self-need. I think it's a pressure or a feeling. I think, I keep telling her, I'm like, listen, amongst a school of 35,000 kids, you're not the only one.
Oh yeah.
Because I think she feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, you look at probably the Instagram stories and everything else that's out there. That's
Yeah.
where a lot of the pressure comes from. It's
My
like,
life's
look
perfect.
what all these other kids are doing and
Looks
how perfect
perfect.
they
Yeah.
are, and they're on track, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah. No, you're right.
so.
Yeah, I
That
think
wasn't around.
I don't think there is an answer, number one, Kurt, to your question, but I think that the approach we're trying to take is just to reinforce if something feels right for you, it probably is. Don't compare yourself to
Yeah.
fictitious worlds,
Yep.
but also know that you can change your course. I mean, we just talked about 3 of the 4 of us changed degrees. And by the way, after I left architecture, I went to electrical engineering, which
So
one
close.
physics class, physics class changed my mind there. So finally, I found the business school, thank God. But
Took
but
a
that's
wrong
just
left
it.
turn on campus.
It's the story for us is always if you do what you enjoy and you work hard at it, you'll make enough money. You will find a future in that.
So is school necessary?
No.
I don't think it is.
Wow, that was quick.
Well, I've had enough of it.
Yeah.
I know plenty of scrappy people out there that, as long as you're solutions oriented and you know how to communicate with other people, I don't know that you need it. I really don't.
So if your daughter came to you next semester and said, I'm stepping out of school, there's the interesting conversation, right?
I think the caveat to that for me is what are you interested in doing? Right. If you're going to do something where you need other people to want to engage you to do that, you need school.
Yep.
Like it or not, that's a box that people want to check before a lot of them will engage with. If you got a plan to go do something that is totally independent and on you, then okay. Well, I just want to see the action and the effort going against it.
Right.
School.
Yeah, not I'm leaving school and coming home to just sit on the couch.
Yeah,
but I think I think ultimately the idea, the long term idea would be that school would eventually happen.
Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't happen right now. And your response is interesting because like I get really uncomfortable in that space, but yet, admittedly, as a dad, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because I'm like, listen, if it's not right, then this is what we're fine with you doing that. And then when it comes up, I'm like,
well, and again, I think it gets back to Alan's point around kind of what's the intent, what's the passion behind it. If my child desperately wants to be a brain surgeon, but then all of a sudden says she doesn't want to go to school, that's not going to work out. But if there's some entrepreneurial spirit behind it and there's something that she wants to do that is independent, then absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's funny how we all have daughters in college right now.
Yeah.
They're all going to graduate at different times.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Hopefully
graduate.
on different tracks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Doing different things and probably all having the same challenges.
Yeah.
No,
Of
absolutely.
is what did I just do? What am I going to do next?
Right.
And you had asked like how do you explain that to them? And I'm just thinking back. I don't know if I've ever walked through my career path and the decisions I made to show that it's not a straight line. I think that they remember the companies I worked for, the brands I worked with.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they've ever drawn any lines to say, "Wow, that's not a straight line." Why'd you go from here to there?
Yeah.
To basically demonstrate.
Yeah.
It wasn't the degree I graduated with. It wasn't a straight path. Internally, some jobs were the next job, but company to company jump was for totally different reasons. And if you were to kind of unpack why you left one job, went to another, that probably defines who you are more than the work you've done.
Yeah.
Which is that sense of adventure or curiosity or learning or growth or so that might be something that I do with Emily, and just show her like there's nothing to panic about. You don't have to have the finish line in sight when you're
Not
starting.
at all. Right. No.
No, but you can't today.
No.
You can't today, right? I mean, I think, and what's hilarious is I was thinking about this recently, like the three major companies that I've worked for, so I'll say three, there were four, but there are three major companies. Like the areas of expertise or the industries that each of those companies are in are the three things that I hated not hated the most. Two, I didn't really care for. One was just completely oxymoron to my personality. So I worked for a world-class manufacturing company that makes motorcycles. I was like polo shirt preppy in high school. It's like me on a motorcycle was a whole oxymoron right there. So spent 15 years with them, built a museum, worked for a museum fabrication company. I couldn't use a screwdriver. I went and worked for a major home improvement company, and now I'm in a sports company. It's like, what the hell?
When you put it like that, I'm like, what the hell?
Right. So it's,
Yep.
and so I think it's just, you just don't know the track, right?
Yeah.
And I always tell her it's so much rooted in the relationships and the people that you meet along the way.
Yes.
And it's not so much about the jobs and the industries,
That's a
but
really
it's the
good point.
people that you actually meet.
That's a really good point.
So
I mean, we're an example and proof of that right here. If you think about that sense of a graduate or an undergrad, and they're thinking about their future, they don't know a team. They haven't met their team. Right. So it's very isolated thinking.
yeah.
What am I going to do? And you're like, you're going to do what gets you excited, what gets you up in the morning, and what makes you feel like you're making a difference for yourself and for your family when you have one, and for the community around you. But when you find that team, that's going to fill in a lot of the blanks too. Of like, oh, that's why I like what I do.
Yeah. That's the other piece of just kind of nugget if they're listening is, enjoy the people that you meet on the journey. To your point, everybody's focused on where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? I've got to get ahead, yada, yada. Looking back in my career, I met some incredible people. There's a lot more that I wish in retrospect I'd probably spent more time to get to know. To know them, their curiosities, and what drove them, because at this point in the career, it's all about the people.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
That's exactly it.
And that step, especially for somebody just coming out of college, right? It takes courage.
Yeah.
They put themselves out there and meet those people and put themselves in the situations where they get that kind of exposure and learn from other people.
It is, but we got to teach them that.
Yeah.
In
Oh,
school,
absolutely.
like
Yep.
all this academic stuff, we need to teach them what life is, right?
Yeah.
What career life is, what it really is all about.
Absolutely.
There's a African proverb that's like one of my favorites, and I heard Angela Merkel use it a couple times. And it's if you want to go fast, go alone.
Yeah.
If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah, that is a great. Yeah.
And every time I hear that, I'm like, yeah, I really forget. Like I'm all about in my head thinking about me alone, and then forgetting about no. Some of the best times and the best things we've done have been with others, not alone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is
Yep.
great.
How about a break and we'll jump into another
Yeah.
bourbon.
Let's take a quick break.
All right.
Cool. Sweet.
Be right back.
So we're here, episode 3, continuing on from where we left off. Here with my friends in Bourbon Boys. We have David,
Hey, guys.
Elton,
Yes, sir.
and Derek.
I'm thirsty.
All right, let's go. Who's next?
I think I'm up.
Yeah,
Okay.
David, you got this one.
So this is kind of, at least in our neck of the woods, probably the most elusive bottle, and that's Blanton's. So
Yep.
because of our fine state of North Carolina and the way that they manage alcohol coming into our state, it's very difficult to find a lot of different bourbons, and one in particular is Blanton's. So I'm going to geek out on you guys just a little bit.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yep. So, in order for me to kind of tell you guys a little bit more about Blanton's, I think we got to really start with Kentucky. So, about 95% of the world's supply of bourbon comes out of Kentucky. Kurt, that's a state where they have
You'll see it
bourbon.
someday.
Yeah.
We've all been there. It was really a good trip. Sorry you couldn't make it. So, anyways,
I've been there, just not with you.
okay. So the cool thing about Kentucky and what makes it special for bourbon, it's got a lot to do with the seasonality and the weather, but also there's a ton of limestone. And so it filters a lot of the deposits out of the water. And so the water's great for distilling. The soil and the climate is great for corn. Obviously, corn's a huge part of bourbon. But the interesting part with the swing in temperature and the seasonality of the weather has to do with the movement of the wood in the barrels. And so being a woodworking guy, I've always been kind of intrigued by wood as a medium, if you will, and the way that you have to work with it is different than most things because it is, or at least was at one point, a living thing. And so it moves and shrinks and expands and does all kinds of interesting things. And so with the changes in temperature, oak will absorb the bourbon that's in the barrel and then release it. And so that's where you get that oaky flavor as well as the amber color.
Interesting.
So, giving you guys that context just as we get into Blanton's and some of the unique characteristics about the flavor, it'll tie back to that. So, going back from all of that, how did Blanton's come about? So, interesting, in this day and age, there's lots of single barrel premium bourbons out there. And Blanton's really was the first premium, or what they call super premium bourbon, that was a single barrel. And so that goes pretty far back to Colonel Blanton, who was a distiller. And we'll talk in a minute about how that connects back to single barrel. But the master distiller at Buffalo Trace Distillery, which is now what it's called, but it was something different at that time. It's all part of the Sazerac family now. But Elmer T. Lee was the master distiller, and he was there for many years and started, he's actually an engineer, and started facilities and doing a lot of different operations type work, but eventually knew that he wanted to become a distiller, and so really worked his way up and learned a lot. And he learned a lot from Colonel Blanton. So about a year before his retirement, was 1985, but so in 1984 he was tasked with coming up with a super premium bourbon. And so he thought about, well, how should I do this? And obviously remembered, his work with Colonel Blanton in the early 40s. And went back and thought about Colonel Blanton whenever he had to entertain really important guests or diplomats or whomever was coming through. He would go to Warehouse H there on the facility and would get kind of what they called the center cut barrels from that warehouse. And he would taste them and he would find one that he really, really liked, and he'd bottle that entire barrel. Wow. And so that's where single barrel comes from.
Okay.
And so
Meaning it's sourced, it is bottled and sourced from one single barrel.
from one single barrel, based on the distillers tasting it and saying, "Yep, this is the one."
where others are coming from maybe
multiple
same
barrels.
batch, but across multiple
barrels.
barrels. Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
That's
Makes
interesting.
sense.
Yep.
So he went with that same approach and basically went in and handpicked a barrel, and this is going to be this run of single barrel bourbons. So that was 1984. Elmer T. Lee then retired in 85, and he is the one that you can basically stakes the claim of creating the single barrel bourbon and that super premium classification, if you will. The interesting thing, and this is where we bridge back to Kentucky and the swings in temperature and weather. Colonel Blanton, right after the repeal of Prohibition in 1933, he and any other distillers that were still in business, because a ton of distillers went out of business, obviously, they anticipated this increased demand. And so they started bringing bourbon back into production in a big way. And space was a major concern for them as they were producing all these barrels. They needed a place to put them all. And so Colonel Blanton decided to go with speed of construction over quality in some cases, and built a metal warehouse. And that is Warehouse H. And because of the thin metal walls, the change in temperature occurred more quickly than other warehouses. And so that absorption of the bourbon and the release happened more consistently and more frequently within that warehouse. And so that's where a lot of
That's really interesting.
the oaky taste and the amber color, but the interaction between the bourbon and the oak in that metal warehouse, again, happened more quickly than in other places. And so to this day, that's where Blanton's sits.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Very
very
cool.
interesting stuff. The other cool thing that I like Blanton's for its taste. I mean, it really is a great tasting bourbon. It's also just fun, kind of that allure of finding that sucker, And I texted these three guys Christmas. I guess it was 2 days before Christmas last year. And I happened to be in one of our ABC stores, and I was checking out, and the cashier said, "You found what you're looking for?" I was like, "Well, no." He said, "Well, what were you looking for?" And I was like,
In that exact way.
I was
You have to see the face to understand that.
Kurt knows the face.
I do.
And the cashier kind of looked at me, and I was like, "Well, I was looking for, Blanton's or Buffalo." And he kind of looked at me and held up one finger like, "Hold on a second." And my eyes got really big, and I turned around, and the guy behind me was like, "Did he just say Blanton's?" And his eyes got big, and that guy yelled out, "Bring out 2." And so the cashier went in the back and came back out with 2 boxes, and Blanton's comes in a nice box with a little velvet bag. And so it was Christmas, right?
Like
so,
Tiny Tim, was he there?
Yeah, a
Like,
little
God
bit.
bless us, everyone.
That's everyone, yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's what I like about Blanton's. It's just it's the hunt.
It is, for sure.
It is obnoxious, but at the same time, if it were on the shelf on a regular basis, it wouldn't be what it is. Right.
And I can imagine that's outside of North Carolina too. Like it just doesn't seem to have like I know some people have collected a lot of the bottle tops.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's a young fellow that is in our office, and his parents have got a connection with a liquor store, I think in Ohio. And he's like,
Okay.
anytime you want it, just let me know.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, so it's interesting. And Do, you brought up the stoppers,
Right.
And the other cool thing with Blanton's is each bottle. First of all, it's a beautiful bottle, very
it is.
round, looks like a barrel. It's got a little
Yep.
stout top to it, and then the stoppers are cast metal of a horse and a jockey, and there are 8 different positions of the horse and the jockey that represent the positions of the horse and the jockey as they go around the track. And so the very last one obviously represents the S in Blanton's, and it's the jockey and the horse completely stretched out crossing the finish line. And so if you look really closely on the stoppers, there's a BLANTO. So you got
very
all
cool.
the letters.
Wow.
And so in addition to hunting for the bottle, you also want to hunt for the bottle that has the letter you don't have.
Right. It's
Which
like
is
a
kinda
board
cool.
game at this point.
Yeah.
So-
it's kind of cool.
Yes.
Very cool.
So we have collections starting now. We have keys to collect.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have-
both.
Yes.
Exactly.
So
This
it's
is
just, again, it's the fun.
It's a nice novelty.
Yeah.
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 So it's a 93 proof, so it's pretty smooth. The nose, very vanilla, caramel, butterscotch. Some of the baking, clove, cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit. The taste is sweet. It's not TX sweet, but it's very smooth, very sweet. A little bit of citrus, and obviously the oak, just from, again, Warehouse H.
Yep.
Pulling and pushing that bourbon through the oak and driving that amber color and that oaky taste. So
That's brilliant.
yeah, the website too. I mean, definitely, guys, check out their website. There's some really cool history, some really cool old school black and white photos of Colonel Blanton, Elmer T, and then there's actually an Elmer T. Lee bourbon that is out that we all need to try and get our hands on as well. That'd be a great one too. Apparently, it tastes very similar to Blanton's, but I've heard that it's easier to find, but I've not found one yet. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it.
Put on the list.
Let's
That's it.
try this.
We gonna try it?
Yeah, let's try it.
Let's do it.
A little slow on the pour there, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I loaded up a couple minutes ago.
All right, let's give it a shot.
I mean, it is smooth.
It is good.
Yeah. It is worth a hunt.
Yeah.
But it is the Bigfoot of bourbon. You cannot find it anywhere. At least
But-
we cannot.
Yeah,
Right.
When I did that right before Christmas, did find that one bottle. It was still $65. I mean, there are people out there probably would pay stupid money for it, but
Yep.
there's stuff on the shelf right now that's $80. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not.
So I talked about looking for it. So we drove to Florida from North Carolina earlier this year, and which my family loved.
Stopped at every liquor store.
Not every liquor. You saw my wife. There was some we missed, honey. I promised. But I found it in one in Florida. So
You did?
between here and Florida, it was very elusive. But the gentleman there, it was a small, private liquor store. No ABC in Florida, I don't believe. He wanted 3 times what you paid for it.
You texted me. You said,
did.
"What should I pay?"
I know.
And I was
did.
like, "Not that."
I know exactly. And I told him,
Seriously.
dude, you want it more than I do. I mean,
That's crazy.
He wanted $180 for it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. He'll get it. There'll be someone who's,
Stupid.
I think ever since both you, Dave, and Alton told me about how hard it is to find, every time I'm traveling, I'm always near or, walking from the hotel over to a liquor store, not for sad reasons, but just
I'm lonely.
it's so sad. But just for that hunt, which is it just becomes one of those things where you go, all right, I'm crossing these cities off my list because I tried. And
Hey, it's like all the
it's gonna-
pictures I
it's-
sent to you guys from Wisconsin last week.
Right,
Right?
right.
Oh my God, they got whistle pig.
I
Oh
will
my God,
say
they got
See,
angels.
this.
The fun side of that, though, is it has kind of been the ubiquitous answer. You walk in a liquor store, and they're like, "What are you looking for?"
Yeah.
You say Blanton's, and you get an immediate reaction and an engagement. It's not like I haven't had anybody roll my eyes at me like, "Get the hell out of here."
Yeah.
But the guys and gals that work at the stores, they will immediately come back with, "Everybody's looking for that," or "I wish we had more," or whatever.
Right.
It's such a fun way to, break the ice. And then it's easy to say, "Well, okay, well, if you don't have that, what should I look at here? What do you got local?"
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
And
what should I buy now?
I'm not leaving without something.
It's definitely something I'd like to research more, just in terms of the states and the regulations and how they're different. I mean, here in North Carolina, it's hard to find a fifth of Buffalo Trace, but yet you can go down to Frugal McDougal in South Carolina and get a half gallon of it. So it's just very different. It's very different.
Do we know if there's anything that's happening between the distillery and the state? Meaning, like, are there certain distilleries where they're like, we will not?
Don't know. I don't know.
Because I'm wondering if it's but you found it in North Carolina, so it's not like it's on the.
And I think so much of it
the
is
naughty
just
list.
they just probably aren't doing that much of it. Even when
Right,
we were
right.
there at Buffalo,
Right.
they did. I don't even
No.
think they didn't even have Buffalo, did they?
I
think they had
I
they
brought,
did have
I brought a
Buffalo.
Buffalo
Okay.
home.
But they did
didn't
have Blanton's
No, they had
they did
Taylor.
not, yeah.
They
Yep.
didn't have Elmer T.
at Eagle Rare.
They had Eagle Rare. They had
So Blanton's makes
White
Eagle
Dog
Rare? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the cream.
yeah. I
was
mean,
it.
the bourbon cream
But
was
there's
good.
so
And the white dog.
Yeah, the White Dog.
one of Liz and I's favorite
Remember that? Oh,
yeah, I do remember the
Oh
White
my
Dog.
God!
one of our favorite restaurants here
I
though.
wish Kurt had been there.
Yeah, I know it would have been
He
nice,
like
right?
that.
I thought you were there.
I would have found your Blantons. So one of our favorite restaurants here in Huntersville always has Blanton's.
How much is it a pour?
I was just going to ask that.
I don't even know. Sometimes I get it for free because I know the owner. We've gotten to know the owner pretty good, but he always has it.
Yeah.
I know what is going to be on the cabin's wish list for tasting that night.
Blanton's.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can let her know now.
I mean, I think
we'll put
I'll
some
put
rare
Trudy
ones
on
on. Well, because she'll have connection into
Yeah.
the distributor to go. Yeah,
because they
how
don't
many
have to
bottles
go.
do you want?
They don't have to go through the state. I don't think.
I don't know.
Oh, that's true too. Because
I don't know.
otherwise, every
Yeah.
bar would have whatever the ABC is serving.
Trudy, your
Yeah.
challenge has been set.
That's
All
right.
right.
Good luck,
Make it
Trudy.
happen.
May the force be with you.
Yeah.
The
I
force
like it.
be with you.
I like it. I like it. So we're gonna stay in the same family tonight,
Yep.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Sazerac.
I like it.
Yeah. Talk about, we'll have Buffalo Trace next, which occurred to your point earlier about the labels being the same place. Yeah, they're all manufactured or produced out of a Buffalo Trace now. It's interesting, and I'll get to in just a minute, but just to add on some of the Blanton story there. But one of the things that the Buffalo Traces claims is, hey, we've been doing it the same way for a couple hundred years. And the story of Buffalo Trace as a distillery goes back to the early 1800s when there was a warehouse built by the Kentucky River for shipping purposes. So
Okay.
they acquired goods there, sometimes bourbon for transport on the river. Legend has it that there was some distilling going on there as well. But it's confirmed that in 1858, there was a distillery that was built there. So we know since at least 1858, there's been distilling going on there. Continuously since then, a lot of growth, a lot of changes in ownership, interesting stories along the way. There was a distillery built, and then in 1882, lightning strike, big fire, whole place burned.
Wow.
Thank God they came back with resilience and built an even bigger distillery. So it kept it going. The interesting thing, and they talked about this, we did have the chance to visit the Buffalo Trace Distillery when we went on the Bourbon Trail, which I highly, highly, highly recommend.
Yeah.
When Prohibition came into be, a few distilleries, if you remember, were granted rights to provide medicinal
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that.
whiskey.
Yes.
They were one of the few that got to provide
That's
medicinal.
right. That's right.
Not only were they allowed to provide and bottle and provide medicinal whiskey, they were also allowed to produce new whiskey. So to keep the supply chain going. So
It was a pretty generous prescription
yes, oh yeah, they were there was a lot
without
of
any
people,
age restrictions or malady associations. Like
yeah.
you know,
Kind of like marijuana
I've
today.
I've got a hangnail and I'm 6 years old.
Oh, you need
here's-
some. You
Have
need
we
some
got a
bourbon.
bourbon
You gotta
for
have
you?
yes, yeah.
Yeah. So cool part of the story. Yeah, I don't know. They don't really talk about if there were bribes involved or if it was just luck of the draw. Why that was, but so Prohibition hits. Almost everybody shut down. They get to keep going. In 1933, when Prohibition is lifted, they were one of only like 4 distilleries in Kentucky that were currently ready to make whiskey in production. So
No like 6 year wait.
there
of
was no
barreling,
ramp
no 10,
up,
no 12.
no
yeah.
stills or anything.
Yep.
So
Wow.
they were ready to roll. So they've been in continuous production. So long history, really cool story, beautiful facility there to tour and visit. But the interesting thing about Buffalo Trace, as Dave had mentioned earlier, it's part of the Sazerac family now. It changed hands a few times before that. But it really wasn't until 1999 that it was renamed as the Buffalo Trace Distillery, and they launched their flagship brand.
Yeah.
So you talk about hundreds of years of production,
Yep.
doing it the same way.
Yeah.
But they really only brought this label out in 1999.
Which is really interesting when you look at Taylor and you look at Pappy and you look at Blanton's. I mean, there's at least it feels like probably more historical kind of legacy brands within their portfolio.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of them are named after the people there. You talked about Blanton's. There was Colonel Taylor,
Yep.
part of their history. George Stagg was a
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of their history and all that. So the labels that they bring forward in other areas are tied to that. But yeah, Buffalo Trace was just introduced. Now the idea, and I did not know this till we started prepping for the show, but Buffalo Trace actually refers to like a path, a literal path that was carved out by the migration of the buffaloes.
Okay.
So, which ultimately became like a trade route or whatever. But that is that's
interesting.
where the name originated was with that.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Like I said, very cool facility. I think we actually had lunch there.
Yeah,
did.
the barbecue joint there is fantastic.
Let's be clear, we did not have lunch there.
Yeah.
75% of us
Yeah,
did.
Kurt did
Yeah.
not. David, Derek, and Alton had
It
a
was
wonderful
great.
lunch.
I think that, and we stopped there after we did Woodford,
Yes, we did.
We did.
right? So we saw like the traditional
Yeah.
limestone wall, wood interior. We didn't go into the actual storage and barreling.
Right. I think I can't remember, but I think we missed getting a tour.
We did.
We did.
But the facility is
Yeah.
like super. It looks super
Yeah.
old school industrial, like
Yep.
ironworks. It's a lot of brick and
Well,
steel and
it was super interesting to go from Woodford to Buffalo. I mean, Woodford is just, it's almost elegant.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
in a kind of, I don't know, rustic way.
Yep.
And then to your point, Derek, you go to Buffalo, and it's not that it's rusty, crusty industrial. It's like really cool.
Super
kind
cool.
of just, yeah, it was just like opposite ends of the spectrum, but both really, really neat.
and both working really hard to produce really good bourbon.
Yeah.
And it is.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a 90 proof.
Okay.
I think when I take a sniff,
Yeah.
I get some brown sugar, really sweet, and then when I taste, I feel some
Good
mint
call.
in there.
You feel what?
Some mint,
Really?
actually, yeah, which is a little different than otherwise, but
I think you nailed the brown sugar on the nose. That's,
Yeah.
I smell Parmesan cheese.
Of course you do,
In
Wisconsin boy.
episode one, I think I said this was my first experience of bourbon.
That's right.
Buffalo
Yeah.
was my first.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
still a fan.
Buffalo is probably one of my favorite bourbons for the main reason. My wife, we've never had a drink that we both like. She's always been like kind of a Chardonnay person, and I was like into beer and IPAs and whatnot, and would drink bourbon on the side. My wife loves Dr. Pepper. That's like her go-to, soft drink. And I was drinking Buffalo Trace one day, and I was like, you know what? She likes Dr. Pepper. I bet that spicy bourbon kind of thing she'd be
that's
into.
a really good call.
And so I just like, Sarah, try this. What do you think? And
That's a really good call.
and that was it. I mean, she is a Buffalo Trace fan.
Yeah.
if I've ever
she
met
is.
one.
Yeah, she is.
Would you like on my third sip of this? It's feeling. I want to say thicker, but it's not. It's not thick, sticky like a liqueur or anything like that. It's. And I don't know if that's just if that's just a mouthfeel.
Is it do you think it's the finish with a new sip layered on top of it?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Which I'll try the fourth.
Yeah, keep
Yeah.
going. They don't release the mash. The mash bill is not released.
Wow. So another one. So
Yeah.
we're like 0 for 3 tonight on mashes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There obviously with the following of Buffalo Trace, there's a lot of sites where you can get reviewers who are speculating.
Okay.
Pretty
Wow.
consistently, they're
I'm going to go. It's higher on the corn.
high on corn,
It's got a
and they're
sweetness
all
to it.
speculating consistently. I say not all, but they're consistently speculating less than 10% rye,
Okay.
which would drive up with the
Okay.
barley mix of that.
Yeah.
So maybe some of that finish. It's
Yeah.
relative
Yeah.
to the Russell. We talked about had a long finish.
Right.
This kind of has a little bit short, as a kind of a medium finish.
Yeah.
It's
But
definitely there.
It feels full though. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't. I don't feel it thinning out. Like
Yeah.
No.
it's got a good warm. Like that's why I said it. Like my mouth feels like it's thicker,
Yeah.
but it's not it doesn't have a viscosity thickness to it. It just feels.
No, but it hangs.
yeah.
The taste
Yeah.
hangs for me too.
Yeah, I like it.
I do too.
I think what's
call.
interesting is all the commonalities I'm hearing. So Russell's Reserve. They talked a lot about the limestone and how they filtrate the water and the importance of that in their process. And it sounds like that's coming out in a couple of these other ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think a lot of it has to do with Kentucky, right? I mean, it's just kind of has that perfect balance of environmental things that you need in order to make a good bourbon.
Yeah.
And then I think also immigration. You've got people that were coming in from other countries and bringing recipes and different flavors, and then the migration out west. A lot of people stopped in Kentucky. They didn't go farther than Kentucky. That's where they got.
The long walk.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that Buffalo Trace was kind of narrow. Only
There
so
you go.
many people
Yeah,
could go
exactly.
through
Once the
there, so-
Buffalo's, the path ended, like stopped here.
Right. Yeah, tolls. It was a mess.
So when you talk about recipes coming over too, are you thinking that there are whiskey recipes that were distilled overseas
Could
that
be.
came here and said we don't have the same ingredients, but
Let's work with what we got.
let's work with what we got,
And
and here
the water as a foundation is different, right?
right, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Just like bagels and pizza, like when you go to a different city, what you would think is a common recipe tastes very different because of the water.
That's why I buy my dough at Ferrucci's. They bring it in from Brooklyn.
Somehow we went from bourbon to bagels
bagels.
and pizza.
Oh, sorry. That's that's the
ditch.
other podcast I do.
Oh, okay.
Bourbon and
I
bagels.
wasn't invited to that one either.
True
That's all
story.
I like it.
That's good.
Yeah.
It is good. I have
Well
to
done.
say, it is a very good bourbon. It is very
Yep.
good. It's got a really nice blend between. There's not really a sweetness to it. Do you think there's any sweetness in it?
I do.
Do you really?
When
Okay.
you said brown sugar,
Yeah.
I was like, "Yep, that's it. I nailed it." And then on the I don't taste the brown sugar, but I definitely taste a lot more of that warm, sweeter. Maybe it's a caramel. Maybe it's that, like you said, it's got some spice in it.
Yeah.
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 Well, at the very least, I think everybody ought to go out and try and find some because we certainly like it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was going to
that's
say,
for sure.
so here's
Yeah.
the public service announcement for the
Right.
week. If you've got somebody that likes bourbon and you're looking for a gift and you find Buffalo Trace,
Yeah.
I haven't found a person who turns it away,
Who didn't like it?
who doesn't get excited about it.
Which brings us to last call.
Last call.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Really,
So
it's over.
we're gonna spin the wheel on last call.
Ooh. And our choices are Russell, Buffalo, and Blanton's.
You've got new neighbor moves into the neighborhood.
New neighbor.
New
All
neighbor.
right.
And go back to what you just said. Public service announcement.
Public service announcement. So I'm not actually buying them a drink.
You're
I
buying.
just give them a suggestion of
this
these
is
three.
this is a gift. This is a gift.
It's a gift, or
Wait a
you have
minute,
it in
wait a
your
minute.
house and you
I'm
want to have a
buying
drink
it
together.
for my new neighbor.
You're buying. Yeah, you really like.
So if I
them.
find Bland's, I sure as hell ain't giving it away. So
all right. You bump into your new neighbor at the local bar,
okay.
and you go, "We should get to know each other. I'm a bourbon guy," and the neighbor said, "You know what? I've always wanted to learn more about bourbon. Where do I start?"
You want me to lead us off with this?
Yeah. What is your?
We're all staring
He's
at you.
looking at
Yeah,
you.
you're all, yeah.
I think we know your answer.
Yeah.
You're not that good looking.
I'm trying.
Right.
Yeah, face for radio.
Face for radio.
So let's just remind everyone the choices were Russell's,
Yeah.
Blanton's, and Buffalo Trace. Those are on the shelf behind the bar,
Yeah.
and you've got to kind of show or share with the neighbor.
Yep. All right. Oh, this is a tough
Who you
choice. But you know
where's
what?
the neighbor from? Is he new to town? Is he new to the neighborhood?
Guys, there's not a right or wrong answer here. It's just last call.
Because if he's from Wisconsin, there's a whole nother.
You really want to go there, don't you?
You bet I
He
do.
is from out of state,
Okay.
All
out
right.
of state, in the country, out of state.
I'm taking the no wrong answer. I'm taking the easy way out here. I'm going to take Blanton's.
Dude.
I'm going to the. Hey, listen,
Wow.
I might need this guy later. I might need.
But here's how.
I might
here-
need to. I might need to
borrow a ladder.
borrow.
But here's how
something.
it's gonna go. It's like, dude, let me buy you a Blanton's. Oh, we don't have Blanton's tonight.
That's true. Yeah, but it's on the menu. Yeah, we printed that up here.
Yeah,
too.
right. Exactly.
So I'm doing Blanton's. Obviously, the taste is amazing, super smooth. If he doesn't know bourbon, it's easy to introduce. It's easy to enjoy, and there's enough. Again, back to being the Bigfoot of bourbons. It's a fun thing to kind of introduce them to and talk to about. So
Yeah, I
I'm
get
going.
that.
I'm going
All right.
Blanton's. How
Alan,
about
you
you?
got Blanton's?
How about
Yeah.
you, David?
Dude, I'm going Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Russell's I really liked it. But again, it's kind of a special thing, right? You're trying to get somebody onto the craft, right? So Buffalo to me is when you heard us talk about it, it's fantastic. Blanton's, I wouldn't go Blanton's because I almost feel like you got to have some bourbon cred to go there. You know, I mean, it's
Because
like
we're so credible.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, look at my resume.
yeah.
Episode 3.
Episode 3.
Building
We know what we're
credibility.
talking about.
I mean, for somebody who said, yeah, I really want to get into bourbon, I wouldn't start them with Blantons. It just feels like, you know what, you got to maybe you got to
pay your dues.
You got to pay a due, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know. That's just kind of my thought on it. And maybe it's, hey, let's Buffalo Trace, and by the way, the same distillery does Blantons, and if you can find that, bring it next door.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
What do you
about you,
think,
Derek?
Dave?
Derek, what do you think?
I'm almost matched word for word what you were saying, David. If they're just getting into bourbon, I think the Blantons is too big. I would say, Buffalo being my first bourbon taste, I think it's a great way to introduce them. It's just attainable enough too that I might expect a bottle on my doorstep. Shortly after our first, like, hey, welcome to the hood, and here's what we got going on. Like, that would be a good friend exchange, gift exchange.
Mental note: I owe Derek a bottle of Buffalo.
Blantons. But yeah, I'm my last call is in that case it's Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Kurt.
No pressure at Kurtron.
What's your last
I'm
call?
going to go with Russell's Reserve just because I think.
Cheap bastard.
Yep, that's right. I'm going to wait and see how much I like
Yeah,
this
because
guy.
he didn't know if he likes him yet, right?
No, but I mean, I think I don't know. I think the I'm going to say Russell's Reserve doesn't feel as common, and not that Buffalo Trace and Blends is common, but it's like they're the two so well known. And I actually like the story behind Russell. So if I know the story, like the father and son thing, and I think it's kind of a cool piece to tie in. So, and I actually really liked the Russell's Reserve tonight. I thought it was good. I mean,
thought it was
listen, I
great
love
taste in
Buffalo
bourbon.
Trace, and I certainly Blanton's is up there. But to be honest with you, I get kind of tired of hearing about Blanton's. I mean, like, it's a great bourbon, but I don't want to work that hard.
Well, but again, what I
So,
said
I mean-
earlier, though, if it were always on the shelf, I feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
the hunt. It's the hunt that makes
Right.
it fun.
No,
for
that's
me.
true. That's true.
But it's
I mean,
it's a
that's
great
true.
tasting bourbon.
No, it is.
Russell's is a great tasting bourbon too.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, we looked up tonight.
Yeah, it
tonight
was a good night.
Three real good bourbons
Yeah,
tonight.
no, I would agree.
Pretty happy with them.
I would agree.
sure.
So, guys, another good night, and 3 good really bourbons. 3 really good bourbons. Obviously, I've had enough bourbons, so
They were really good.
we've had Russell's Reserve, Buffalo Trace, and the classic Blantons. So here's to tonight. Bourbon on.
Bourbon on.
Bourbon on.